him a strained relationship with Pakistan that he has to mend if the United States is to seriously work on an exit strategy from Afghanistan.
AlJazeera's Kamal Haider reporting that. The Iraqi government has imposed a curfew in parts of the country in response to protests. At least 3 people have been killed there. About 1,000 people rallied in Basra, that's Iraq's second largest city in the south of the country, with protesters blocking a bridge. They're calling on the provincial governor to quit, and they're demanding better services from the government. Meanwhile, in Sulaymaniyah, a demonstration ended in stones being thrown at the headquarters of the Kurdistan Democratic Party. Security forces then shot back at the protesters, reportedly killing 2 people. Staying in Iraq, this time in Kut, protests ended with some demonstrators storming a regional government headquarters. At least 1 teenager was killed in the clashes that followed. The city remains under curfew. Jaina Raf has more on that.
Nofal Falahi refers to this bench as her office. It's from here, with wireless modems, that she and 2 other art students have launched an internet campaign. It mobilizes young people to go out on the streets to protest.
There's many groups working alone, and so we want to put them together. There was 1,000 people when we started on the first week.
It's all carried out on Facebook. Access to the web was essentially banned in Iraq before 2003. While Nof and her friends had seen the internet a few times, they'd never been able to use it. Mustafa is now an expert in using videos and photos.
We're trying to get our message across, and we say that the youth can change things.
This college is a small oasis of freedom, but students here are trying to widen it, using technology to reach out to young people across Iraq and the region to demand change. Haider Fadel uses a mapping program to show where the protests have been held in Iraq and where they're expected.
This is the map of Iraq.
Soon they'll have photos and videos attached. The internet is a tool their parents didn't have, but it's just a starting point. The vast majority of young Iraqis don't own a computer or have access to the internet. Nof's group, Iraqi Streets for Change, is also relying on flyers and tweets via cell phone to spread their message. Iraqis all have the same complaints: corruption, bad services, lack of jobs. But the young feel their very future is being hijacked.
My Iraqi government, you have every year $86 billion. I don't have $5. Just like my brother, we don't have $5.
This is the most freedom they've ever had. They don't want to overthrow the system, but for the first time as a group, they're demanding a better life. Jaina Raf, AlJazeera, Baghdad.
Right over to Uganda now, where polls have closed after a day of voting in the country's presidential elections. It's expected Yoweri Museveni will extend his 25-year grip on the country. Mohammed Ado has more.
The Ugandan military on patrol in the east of the country. They were called in to end the fighting between supporters of Uganda's defense minister, Beatrice Wabudea, and her parliamentary opponent, Nandala Mafabi. Journalists were caught up in the violence. This reporter was shot by security forces. Julius Odeke says he was shot when he refused to hand over his camera.
The windows were closed. I refused to open. At last I had a gunshot, and I started feeling myself paralyzed. I saw blood.
And in the capital, Kampala, vote counting commenced immediately. Polling stations closed. Here, opposition supporters cheer every vote for President Museveni's opponents. Tempers flared earlier on in the day when most voting booths did not open on time.
Uganda is a fledgling democracy, and this is just its 6th election in 49 years. And presented with the opportunity to vote once again, many Ugandans are doing so with a deep conviction.
I voted for Museveni straight away. He has given us peace.
With the message going through, corruption will have an end. We shall have more drugs in hospitals, better roads than we have.
Kizza Besigye, President Museveni's most formidable challenger, says he doesn't trust the country's election commission. He plans to do his own vote tallying and announcement. The government says he will be arrested if he carries out his threat. And if that happens, things could take a turn for the worse. Mohamed Ado, Al Jazeera, Kampala, Uganda.
It's 19:30 GMT is a reminder of our top stories. Bahrain's king has asked his crown prince to start national dialogue with all parties over the continuing unrest in the country. This comes as security forces have reportedly opened fire on anti-government protesters in the capital. President Obama has expressed his deep concern over the situation, as well as that in Libya and Yemen. Meanwhile, Bahrain's crown prince has appeared on national TV appealing for calm. Well, one doctor has told Al Jazeera that the number of casualties in Bahrain is uncountable.
We have a lot of deaths here. I cannot describe the situation. It's awful. It's awful. That's the way we can describe it. It's chaos. The hospital is full of casualties. All the medical staff are running on their feet. It's quite difficult to accommodate all of these casualties. The hospital is nearly full. We've taken a lot of patients to the theater. We took patients to the ICU. The accident emergency is full of casualties.
Well, violence in Libya as well, where up to 27 people have reportedly died as a result of clashes. The country's revolutionary committees, which are considered the backbone of Libya's regime, have said the response to anyone attempting to cause unrest will be sharp and violent. Friday has been scheduled by anti-government demonstrators as a, quote, day of anger against Muammar Gaddafi's leadership. 2 policemen have reportedly been hanged by protesters. And further clashes in Yemen as well, killing 5 people and wounding dozens more. Doctors said 4 people have died from gunfire in the southern port of Aden alone. Crowds have been gathering for 8 days, calling for an end to President Ali Abdullah Saleh's 32-year rule. And over in Jordan, pro- and anti-government protesters have fought in the capital, Amman. At least 8 people were injured. It's the first outbreak of political violence since the opposition began staging regular protests in January. Meanwhile, in Egypt, thousands have taken to the streets in celebration of the removal of President Mubarak last week. The gathering was also a memorial to the 300-plus people who lost their lives in the country's uprising. Right, I'm back in half an hour. Coming up next, it's Talk to Al Jazeera. Bye-bye.
Hello and welcome to Talk to Al Jazeera. I am Mohamed Ado in Entebbe, Uganda. For 25 years, just one man has occupied the Ugandan seat of power, the State House behind me. 66-year-old Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, who seized power while scoffing at African leaders who stay long in power. Today, he has joined the League of African Presidents, whose only wish is to remain in office forever. Mr. President, thank you very much for talking to Al Jazeera. You're seeking a fresh 5-year term. And what is it that you want to deliver in those 5 years that you did not deliver in the quarter of a century you've been in power?
Every year we add something new.